how would you determine whether, for instance, the Berkman Plaza Corona situation where they went, I assume the value adjustment board were adjusted down? What if that was an outlier? Would you, I mean, how would you know if it was an outlier or not to make a determination whether that adjustment would be applied to the entire complex?
Well, first of all, if the value adjustment board reduced it, just in general, from the years I've been there, there's credence. I mean, without me getting into the value adjustment board records on that particular file, there's credence that they found sufficient evidence that the property appraiser's office is wrong. Now, I'm going to sort of not move too far from that particular subject. According to this particular article, again, there's a tax rep in Duval County, and he went to the property appraiser's office with 55 properties. Now, that's a lot of properties. Actually, I know the individual because I've seen him at the value adjustment board. He went to the value adjustment board, and of the 55, 54 were reduced. Now, I can tell you that is a lot of properties. In other words, this person was literally 100% effective at the value adjustment board. Why? Because he found out that the Duval County Property Appraiser's Office had overassessed his clients, and that's not very good. In other words, in the past, when I've dealt with this gentleman, he might bring 15 properties, and he brought 55, and he went on 54. But in this case, getting back to the Berkman, there's reason to believe that the value adjustment board said that the property appraiser's office, without me going into any detail, was incorrect in their findings and made the adjustment. And now, is that fair market value? There's a presumption that it is. Without going into detail, there's a presumption they made the right call. But in the past, let me also add a quick point. When I worked for a previous administration, the property appraiser's office did take that in all the adjustments that the value adjustment board did make. The previous property appraiser did review those, and where they found that where the value adjustment board might have erred in their judgment, the property appraiser's office did a counteraction, basically going up to going to court to remedy the situation.
What kind of managerial experience do you have that would give you the tools to operate this 128-person office?
First of all, when I came to the property appraiser's office, my education was real estate. I studied real estate valuation at the college level. My major is in real estate, and again, I have 27 years of experience as an appraiser. I have extensive civic managerial supervisory skills. I've held several leadership positions in the Jacksonville JCs. I actually worked I was also part of a company prior to coming to the city in Jacksonville. I was in their management, and I feel that is sufficient to provide the leadership. Matter of fact is when I was in the Jacksonville JCs, I would like to add, we were one of the largest chapters in the United States, and one of the years I was on as a board of directors, we were considered, it's called the Marks Award. We were actually selected as being the finest Jacksonville JC chapter in the United States. I've been on the executive board of the Jacksonville JCs. It's basically leadership training through community service, and I believe, coupled with my experience as a real estate appraiser, having worked in various departments, that has prepared me very much to be the next property appraiser in Duval County.
Okay. Another question that has sort of come up out of the campaign. But your opponent and a mayoral candidate said that essentially no one, maybe one person who's not you, is a civil service employee over at that office. That everybody else serves at the pleasure of the property appraiser. If you're elected, would you do anything to change that situation, or would you let it continue on in the way that it is?
First off, that is a really great question, and I have a lot of answers for that. When I came to the Duval County Property Appraiser's Office, basically everybody, except the appointees, everybody was civil service. And that's the way it was in all your departments in the city of Jacksonville. And I'll go into detail, and again, it's a great question. Right now, as we speak, I will also give, and I'll show you, the current employee handbook by the current property appraiser said, okay, here's a handbook. I want you to sign it and acknowledge it that you received it. Now, it was dated September 15, 2009. And I'd like to read just a little excerpt, and I'll go into more detail. It says, I understand that the handbook does not provide any contractual rights or guarantees of employment that I serve at the pleasure of the property appraiser. Then it goes on to say that you can be terminated at any time with or without notice of cause. Now, what this tells me, and this is my opinion, is that it has created a culture of fear in the property appraiser's office. The hardworking men and women of the property appraiser's office do not need, I believe, from day to day, minute by minute, whether or not they're going to have a job. This structure right here is very, very unusual in the city of Jacksonville. And in most cases, in any of this case, office, you'll have maybe, okay, appointed classification. You might have maybe 10 people, or 10% will be appointed. And then you have, in the middle, you have what they call the infrastructure of public servants who need to get the job done of the people. And you know, administrations come and go, appointed people come and go, but the basic services of what we call getting the job done in Jacksonville, they need to be in place. Because right now, as it stands, that whole office, the property appraiser's office, as it stands, could be gone tomorrow. I don't like wholesale changes. It's not good for the employees of the property appraiser's office. One of the things that I think, and would I change, I'll put it this way. If anybody in the office wants to organize labor unions, that type of thing, matter of fact, when I'm out in the field visiting business people, there's a sign usually somewhere on the door, near the door, depending where you're at on the business. I think it's called the WEHART. It's union, and it says you have a right to union representation or whatever. Right now, as I speak, there's only 2 people that I know in the Duval County Property Appraiser's Office that's civil service. I'm one of them, and there's another gentleman. I actually refused to sign this form that Mr. Overton passed out. Actually, I went to my attorney, and my attorney says, Kurt, do not sign the form. They're trying to take away your civil service. And the matter of fact is, if I was at the whim of the property appraiser, there's a good chance that I would not be here today talking before you all, because that limits, First Amendment, in my opinion, it reduces my First Amendment rights of freedom of speech, because I wouldn't be here in front of you all if I knew that my boss could fire me the next day by running for public office. In other words, my candidacy is for all the citizens of Duval County. I think the citizens of Duval County deserve a competitive election. And the way you get competitive elections is have people on the ballot. I don't want people to be timid. I want a community that is challenged on their elected officials to do the best they can for the citizen. And the way you do that is have an open democracy of candidates who run. This form right here is, in my opinion, very intimidating, and it creates a culture of fear. Again, I don't think, if I was in civil service, there's a good possibility I would not be here before y'all today because of the way this form is set up. I just think this is a really bad form, and I've told Mr. Overton in person. I said, Mr. Overton, if somebody comes into this office, employee, and say their hair is not combed right, they could be out of a job. It's that simple. This is very uncharacteristic for the way the city of Jacksonville conducts itself. And I'll take any other questions, because it strikes very dear to me. I'm civil service, and as you can tell, I'm not holding anything back in this campaign. I've enjoyed working for the property appraiser's office and the people for the past 27 years. And I think Mr. Overton needs to be challenged at those given points. And of course, term limits is what's good about in terms of 8s and up. It's time for the citizens to take back their office and to get new leadership. And again, there's a lot of people in Duval County who are capable of providing leadership to the property appraiser's office.
I do have a question, and I did some homework on this, and everything I read contradicts itself. In the property appraiser's office, you do the 90 to 100% of fair market. You're supposed to stay in that realm, but then there are state mandated exceptions, exclusions, that you're bound to as the property appraiser. Is that part of this, and is it as grotesque as that sounds?
Well, that's a good question. I believe there's some very good answers for that. The property appraiser's office, they have a lot of exemptions out there. The property appraiser's office, if you ever look at the property record card, it says fair market value. Getting back to the big picture of the property appraiser's office is supposed to appraise property fair market value. Whatever exemption that a taxpayer is entitled to, that'll be applied to that. Now, whatever they're entitled to, if they're entitled that they get the reduction or assessment exemption, I should say, applied to that. Again, once the fair market value has been applied, then you can apply other exemptions along the line. And I don't think there's I'd like to believe, I don't think there's a property appraiser out there would have any concern if there's something that's a Florida statute that says they're entitled to some exemption that needs to be applied against the fair market value. There's no problem there.
Doesn't that create the situation you're talking about? That this offices on this floor have these exemptions. Isn't it true that some of these state mandates in fact create those inequities that you cannot apply across the board?
Well, you're right, but you gotta remember is those mandates that you're talking about, they are by the citizens of the state of Florida. And if that's what they voted for, that's what they get. I mean that's beyond the control of the property appraiser.
But would you utilize the position to attempt to cause change so that there would be fewer or even conceivably no exemptions for charitable organizations, churches, the things that take
20% Native American.
40% of the potential tax base off of the rolls.
Yeah.
Which would enable us to reduce the ad valorem millage rate for everybody.
That's a great question, and I've actually had the liberty in the property appraiser's office to work when I was doing commercial work exemptions, hand in hand, and you're absolutely right. There are, I don't know if the average person really realizes how many exemption classifications for that there really are, but basically, just off the top of my head, there's churches, religious, there's scientific, and then on down to disability and all that. One of the previous property appraisers used to say, well, everything ought to be up on the table because everything's about budget. And you're right, when you start taking exemption here and exemption there and exemption there, what kind of tax roll are you going to have? The way those is we know that the exemptions are in place because the Tallahassee people said, okay, we want this. But you're right. But I'd like to believe, as an advocate, I would like to believe everything's up on the table, everything's up for review, everything needs to be scrutinized. Because in times like now, as you know, the taxpayer out there has been faced in, say, the last year or so, 2 JA increases, 2 millage increases, stormwater runoff. They're getting, and then we got an economy that is, depending who you talk to, in a recession, maybe depression, depending on who you're talking to. There's a lot of people upset out there, and we need to look closer at what we're dealing with.
Right. Okay.
30-second closing.
Yeah, if you'd like to wrap up for a few seconds, that's great.
Again, I'd like to thank the concerned taxpayers of Duval County as having me as their guest. It's an honor to appear before you all to present my credentials. Again, I want to provide the leadership that the property appraiser's office needs. I want to provide integrity. I want to provide efficiency and transparency to the office. I want to work hard for the public. I want to bring fairness. This property appraiser's office job is about equity. It only works when everybody is being treated the same. I believe that my qualifications, my 27 years of being a real estate appraiser in the property appraiser's office, it has qualified me to be your next property appraiser. And please visit my website, votekraft.com. Thank you very much.